Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our Zoom session. My name is Dr. Stephen Thomas. I'm Director of the Maryland Center for Health Equity and a professor in our Department of Health Policy and Management at the University of Maryland School of Public Health in College Park. What a show we have for you today. You know, the first community dialogue was an open session to discuss the needs and wants of our community partners during the COVID-19 pandemic. The primary area of focus was race and health disparities. Our focus for community dialogues almost immediately expanded as we witnessed and reacted to the most recent murders of Black lives, including George Floyd, Rayshard Brooks, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery, and so many others who have lost their lives to violence fueled by racism. Even as we experienced the COVID-19 pandemic, we witnessed the injustices of health disparities, as well as the inequitable treatment and access to care and resources that are deeply rooted in structural racism. We are grieving. We know that you are also grieving. We also want to take action, and we know that you too want to take action. The stories and lessons learned and will be part of the dialogues as we move forward. So I'm so pleased to introduce you to the faculty that will lead our session today. And they include Doctors James Butler, Cher, Dallal, Typhanye, Dyer, Craig Fryer. Yeah, wave when I call your name. Jennifer Roberts and Mia Smith-Bynum. They represent the African Diaspora, and they have created a wonderful new group called Agents of Change, a new group of public health scholars working to address health disparities through the social justice lens. They will discuss their recently published op-ed, Too Many Names, Too Many Hashtags, and their ongoing work. And with that, I'd like to turn the microphone over to Dr. Craig Fryer. Craig, take it away.
Thank you. Everyone can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. We have a few slides. So first of all, thank you all for giving us this opportunity to talk about our group that we formed over the past 4 years as it relates to our collegiality. And particularly around this issue as underrepresented minorities in academia. And so I'm going to share a little bit about how the group formed, what our purpose was, and then talk to you about 2 seminal events that I believe really shaped our true purpose as scholar activists, and that has led us to this op-ed piece that you are interested in hearing more about. So I just want to give you a little bit of background. For many of you, you already know this, but I want to set the stage for you, particularly for underrepresented minority faculty in academic institutions. And when I use the term underrepresented minority for today, I'm really specifically speaking about those who self-identify as Black and or Hispanic. Because this shapes the reason why we came together and why we felt it was a need to form a group, specifically a writing group, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So first off, I just want to mention that many of us know that nationally, the number of underrepresented minority faculty in academia is disturbingly low. And if we look at the national level, this data comes from the National Center for Education Statistics. 3% of faculty in academia self-identify as Black male, Black female, Hispanic male, Hispanic female. Compare that to 45% that identify as white male, 43% that identify as white female. At UMD, as we think about tenured or tenure track Black scholars, our numbers have dropped since fall 2009 to fall 2016, but these numbers have been dropping for more than a decade. Faculty of color face numerous barriers to being recruited, promoted, and retained in academia. I've given just a few examples here as we think about some of those barriers. Often when the recruitment pool is done for positions, they are deemed to be hard to find. Or if they make it to higher levels, meaning they get to the interview level and the like, they're often described as not being a good fit for institutional culture, thus making it hard for them to be recruited into these positions. As it relates to promotion, some of those barriers are high service demands and unrecognized work, particularly as it relates to mentoring minority students, or peer mentoring, which is a critical factor in success. Another would be lack of senior mentorship. And then finally, as it relates to being retained, often their skill set and expertise is not valued during salary negotiations. They're overburdened with multiple responsibilities, and they're often not sought out for specific leadership positions. All of these factors shape the setting in which we are asked to do our work. And then finally, as in any institution, there is racism. And for underrepresented minorities, faculty, they experience various types. A few may be invincibility, meaning their voice is never heard, they don't feel seen. It could be a department, it could be their school, it could be university-wide. Or there's hypervisibility, where they feel like they're under a microscope. Every step that they take is an assessment or somehow going to be used to describe who they are as a scientist. And then lastly, which is probably the most common that we hear, and this all comes from empirical research, these are not just necessarily my ideas, is that the only reason that we may be there is because we have been benefactors of affirmative action. So in the fall of 2016, as I had been talking to some of my colleagues in the school, the premise was, what could we do? What do we think we want to do as it relates to trying to assist in addressing some of these particular issues? And I had this idea, what would it be like if we formed a writing group with the specific purpose to support our productivity, our collaboration, and the dissemination of our work? And so at that time, I sent an email to every Black and Latino faculty member that was a junior faculty member at the time, meaning specifically they were not a full professor, to invite them to see if they would be interested in a writing group. Some individuals are much more effective writing individually, sitting by themselves doing that type of work. So they were not necessarily interested, but the majority thought that it would be a great idea. The other thing that I did was ask them, was there anyone who should be here that is not here? And so organically it involved to also include those who may not self-identify as Black or Hispanic, but identified as an ally. So our writing group met weekly. We still meet weekly. It's actually a Friday. And it's an 8-hour session. We have a morning writing session. We break bread together during lunch, not separately. It's really important that we break bread together during lunch. And then we have an evening writing session. It's usually 1 to 5. Start at 9 a.m., end at 5 p.m. We write everything from research proposals to curricula to CVs to whatever is necessary as it relates to the work in academia. And we have recently begun to acknowledge the group and publish papers, because one of the things we begin to think about is how could we track if our time was being effective in this regard. This strategy has also then led to, as the group has broadened and matured over time, it provides both functional and emotional support. And specifically, when I say emotional, I'm thinking about mental support. Access to resources is really important. And we talk about resources that are really critical to our professional development and growth, but as well as to our personal growth. And then we also do group intercession to address common stressors affecting members. So members can come to the group with a critical issue that is impacting their ability to work, and we try to intercede as a group. We try to provide not only individual support to that person, but if there are other things that we can do within our departments or within our school as a way to try to alleviate what is happening, we will do so. We strategize with one another as a way to help alleviate some of these issues. So what you're most interested in hearing more about, and when we get into the Q&A, my colleagues will definitely chime in. There were two main seminal events that sort of, with their synergy, I think cemented who we were as a group. and where we wanted to go, particularly if we consider ourselves to be scholar activists. And the first was the March for Science in April of 2017. And I'll tell a quick story. For those who know me, I love narrative. I will tell you a story for every aspect of any point, but I'll make this quick. So the March for Science was coming up and we were getting a lot of emails about it. And I have to be honest, I had no interest in the March for Science initially. And I was in my office and Dr. Butler and Dr. Jackson was in my office and we started talking about this March for Science. We went to the website and I started to think, well, why would I march, right? And so, our current administration at that time was saying some really demeaning facts about science, and science is unreal, and hashtag fake science, if you all remember all of that. And one of the things that is really pertinent to us was what we consider to be racial disparities in the funding of scientists at NIH. And we began to rally around that particular issue and say, yes, we should participate in the March for Science and we need to be seen. At that time, Dr. Jackson began to scroll through the website to pick out a t-shirt. They were selling t-shirts on the website to say which t-shirt she would like. Dr. Butler picked out one and they both looked at me and said, which one you choosing? And I jokingly said, I'm not getting any of them. I don't like any of them. I'm gonna make my own. And they sort of chuckled and laughed. And I said, okay. And so the next day I came back and I said, this is my t-shirt. It's gonna say Black Scientists Matter. And Dr. Jackson, with her background in visual arts, was like, oh, we just need one other piece. And so we decided to use the continent of Africa in the background. And you see those shirts that we're wearing now. One of the most important pieces of this t-shirt is that on the back of the t-shirt, it has our last name. And the reason why we did that is I knew very intuitively that if we march with the message that Black Scientists Matter, someone is going to say, well, where are they? And I wanted to have the ability to say, you're looking at one, you're talking to one, and not just me, but you're talking to this group. So our common identity at that time was Black Scientists Matter, and our common injustice was around this theme of racial disparities in funding of scientists at NIH. We know that Black scientists are less likely to be funded by NIH proposals. It's considered the gold standard in public health research. We want an equitable and fair opportunity to receive those funds. NIH knows that this is an issue. I will admittedly say that they've known this for some time and they're trying to work it out. They released a big report last year that highlighted some of the implicit bias as it relates to the way in which scientists of color identify, which has turned out to be a barrier as it relates to funding. And then the other piece is the piece that is shaping why we're here today, is the development of this op-ed, and that was earlier this month. And Dr. Smith-Bynum led this charge with us and said, hey, do you want to do something? And we all did. And I want to thank her because it has allowed us to channel our anger, frustration, and anguish in a productive and effective way. And our common identity there was around this issue of Black scholar activists, both professionally and personally. So what we see in our sociopolitical environment affects us on both levels. If you look across this group, we all are determined to address critical root causes of a whole host of health issues that impact communities of color. And at the same time, in this fight toward health, we now have this pandemic of COVID-19 in addition to the existing pandemic of racism. And so we were outraged. Our common injustice was our outrage at how this was disproportionately impacting our community. So here are some photos from our participation in the March for Science. And that middle picture there, I'm gonna jokingly say, that was a couple sizes ago. I just look big in that photo to me. But anyway, I was being interviewed. I had the opportunity to be interviewed during the march by a reporter by the Washington Post. And this is a snippet. Dr. Smith-Bynum captured these for us. But you'll see us there in the rain, marching with our signs. You see that one photo that someone took of the back of our t-shirts. And we got a lot of attention as it relates to our shirts and both our message. All positive for the most part. People were really interested. One of the most powerful things that I experienced at this march was the number of youth that were there. Most of my work is with youth and young adults. And the number of parents who said, my child would like to take a photo with you, was very heartwarming as we relate to essentially individuals who are committed to science and the importance of science in any country or community, and thinking very critically about our research enterprise. And then this is a snapshot of the front page of the op-ed, Too Many Names, Too Many Hashtags, the killing of unarmed Black people is a public health pandemic. And all of the co-authors, along with Dr. Smith-Bynum. And Dr. Smith-Bynum added agents of change. Our identity as Black public health scholars who study health disparities through a social lens has really crystallized in a way that I think is very powerful, and that we didn't necessarily think about until we had this opportunity to develop this op-ed. And so you may say, so what, right? We have a writing group and we've been collaborative, and what does that mean for us? It's bigger than that. And I want to talk a little bit about the culture that it has formed for all of us. And so we have become what we refer to as members of a family. So I don't have work family there. I don't have family in quotes, because it's not family in quotes. It's not work family, it's family. And so we now have expectations, and we rely upon one another, as do members of a family. Culturally, our writing group, our Agents of Change, has created a gracious space that engages our full personhood. So we have created a space that allows us to express our full range of emotions, regardless of what those are, in the workplace. Now, since COVID-19 has been virtual, but it was in the workplace. We met every Friday in the conference room of the Center for Health Equity as one of its associate directors. That is an agreement that I established with Dr. Thomas. And so we have that space all day, every Friday, fall, spring semester. We don't meet in the winter term at all. And we have a truncated schedule during the summer. Either we'll meet monthly or we'll meet every 2 weeks instead of weekly. And thus this culture has led to us referring to our meetings and our gatherings as church. And so as people of color, we reference often, right, what it feels like for us, right? And our ability to vent, our ability to commune, our ability to strategize with one another. And often people have used this term and referred to this term as church. I'm sure this may come up in the Q&A, and my colleagues will speak to that. So we have expected and accepted specific roles that reflect our natural abilities, right? So this is organically involved. This is not something that was planned in that regard. And also have adapted pseudonyms that reflect these roles. And so this is really important, because now what has really taken place is it's not about where I got my degree from or what expertise that I have, but it is about me as Craig, right? And what does Craig bring to the group at large? And that is for every single member of this particular group. Here are some other photos. So we genuinely like each other, so we hang out with each other all the time. That's what you'll see here. Often we're getting together during commencement. In that middle photo at the top, that is a Black male doctoral graduate from the Department of Epi and Biostatistics. He was actually Dr. Dyer's advisee. You see some photos there from the March for Science. One of them includes Dean Lushniak. We actually just ran into him while we were marching. And his quote was, "Those are my people." And he came and took a photo with us. If you look at the photo, the largest photo in the bottom row with Dr. Roberts in the middle, that is actually a photo outside of a restaurant. So one of the other things that we do, we have a semester lunch at the end of every semester that allows us to debrief. And it happens right after commencement. And that is one of the photos from one of those times. We do that every semester as well. So again, here's a screenshot of the actual front of our op-ed, which was placed in Medium. Too many names, too many hashtags, the killing of unarmed Black people is a public health pandemic. And I'll have my colleagues jump in a few minutes to say more about this. But as I go back to it, and we think very critically about what did we want to say and why did we feel a need that we needed to say something. And the truth of the matter is that we were hurting. That's the truth of the matter. And we were pissed off, for lack of a better term. And we needed a way to not only describe what we were feeling, but to channel it in a way so that we can push forward, right? Anger is a natural emotion, but we have to push forward and push through it as a way to figure out what is it that we need to do more. And so that crystallized in the development of this op-ed. And of course, you all saw the final draft, but if you could have seen the multiple drafts that came when you have 7 individuals, right, who are writing those things, right? And we're also academics, so we fought over words and we're connected to certain words. And we debated about which word was the best and which one was most effective and which one would be most inclusive. Because one of the things that we are very clear about as we think about how do we move forward, given our current sociopolitical environment, is that it's going to take all people for this to happen. And so my favorite line in our op-ed is, we want to be crystal clear. This is not a Black versus white issue. This is a battle between humanity and racism. My favorite line, yes, I had something to do with it, but that's not my bias. It's my favorite line in the actual op-ed. And finally, I'll leave you with this. This is another quote from our op-ed that I think crystallizes who we are as AOC. Neither our education nor our profession protect us from the daily experiences of racism. We live in fear that we or our loved ones might not return home safe and sound. Our work then is now life and death matter. And this is the way we view the work that we do. We don't have time to just produce new knowledge. Our goal is, how do we begin to address root causes of these disparities in a way that'll bring justice to communities that have been suffering disproportionately. And if that's the Black community or the Latino community or any other community. Here's our group membership and who they are. One of the things we're very proud of is the evolution of who this is. I came to Maryland in the fall of 2010. At that time, Dr. Smith-Bynum was here. Dr. Butler and I joined in 2010. We came together as part of a larger research team. Dr. Thomas was part of that research team. And then the other individuals came after that time. So the School of Public Health has had this critical mass that has been growing and building. And it's unique. And we understood that it was unique from the beginning. And we still have a long way to go as a school, but we truly appreciate who we have as far as the faculty are concerned in our school as of now. And so thank you for this time. I wanted to make sure that I left most of the time for Q&A. Again, agents of change, and we view ourselves across 3 paradigms: science, justice, and who we are as a collective. And we can open it up for Q&A.
So let's give Dr. Fryer a virtual applause. Thank you very, very much. I love seeing the evolution of an idea. And I'm serving on committees now, promotion tenure committees, where we actually have more than one faculty of color helping make decisions. And I think that is because of the critical mass at the University of Maryland. And we all know, as our new president who takes over July 1, it is a historic moment in the Big Ten for Daryl Pines to join as our president. The floor is open for comments. I'm just simply going to step back until it's time to do the closing. But agents of change, floor is open.
let me, oh, sorry. Apologies. This is Erin. Let me add that for the first time, and this is only our second meeting with the community dialogues, but we have opened them to our community advisory committee and also the Dean's Council. And so we have several folks who are joining from both, and we very much appreciate you all joining us along with our other members of the community dialogues. And additionally, our Dean, Boris Lushniak, was hoping to be with us, but there is an academic leadership forum this afternoon with the provost where they're making multiple decisions on our reentry plans. And so he asked that I express his desire to have been here, and he appreciates all of your engagement. It's very important work that Agents of Change is doing, but all of us.
Thank you, Erin.
Thank you.
So Craig, how do you want to facilitate this discussion here?
I think however the questions come, Dr. Thomas, is fine if they have it for a specific member of the group or if they have it for the larger group broadly, and we can chime in.
Let me ask the larger group because we don't know how many questions are coming in. Just to maybe go ahead and take this opportunity for the Agents of Change to introduce themselves with a little more elaboration, but give us a word that reflects how you're feeling right now as we're in the midst of not only the COVID-19 pandemic, but literally in the midst of a reckoning happening in our country and around the world. The world is truly watching. So I can call on my screen. Typhanye, why don't you just do an introduction to your department and how you—
I knew it.
You had the word.
I knew it. Hello, everyone. I'm Typhanye Dyer. I'm so Craig put associate professor. I'm a newly tenured faculty member in the epidemiology department. Yeah.
Tenure, have mercy. Come on.
I wanted to say a couple of things. The Agents of Change, we communicate all day. It's like Craig said, it's a family. About a month ago, like Craig said, we were pretty angry. We still are angry, but I think through our interactions with one another, I know for me, I feel empowered. I feel empowered to make change. I wanted to point to a couple of things that have occurred to me, and a lot of it has to do with the Agents of Change, but also with Healy, the program that is very empowering for minority faculty or faculty of color.
What's Healy stand for?
Health Equity Leadership Institute.
Oh, I love it.
And I want to be very clear that when I first came to UMD, Craig, and I'm sure he's talking about me, some people like to be in their offices by themselves, and he came and found me and told me that, or suggested that I get out of my office and make myself more visible. And I was hesitant at first. But for the past 8 years, we've grown really, really close. I lean on the other Agents of Change for multiple things. When my father was sick, I didn't really want to engage with anyone. I wanted to just basically crawl under a rock. And I remember we had our end of the year lunch at Burton's, and the support that I got from everyone was just amazing. I remember when I got the tenure track position and Mia emailed me and said, "Good job, sister. Now I'm not the only one." And I looked and I said, "Well, you're not the only Black female." And I looked and I was like, it is just you. Now it's you and me. And then Devin, and then of course, Dr. Roberts. And so I was amazed by that. I didn't realize how significant that was and how significant that was for her to feel like she's like a big sister to me, to feel like she wasn't alone. It was brought to my attention from James Butler that I am one of 2 Black female faculty to earn tenure in the School of Public Health, how significant that is. And then thinking about the fact that Drs. Wilson, Fryer, and Butler are the only Black male faculty who are tenured, and there aren't any more who are on tenure track currently.
The old man here.
Oh, yeah, okay, all right, okay. But the junior faculty, we're still trying to sort of recruit and retain faculty of color, and not just faculty of color, but people who are really going to push and be the voice that we really need to be loud and boisterous when it comes to these issues of racism and oppression. One thing I wanted to leave with was, you know, one of the things that I had a student say this to me, and I was like, that is so profound. She's a Black student in BCH. And I was talking to her about all the things that are going on, and she was crying, and she said, you know what? The plight of the Black academic. We are angry enough to want change, but tired and weary because the same oppression affects us all. So it gets tiring to, you know, maintain our scholarship, to maintain our relationships with our family, to take care of our children, you know, et cetera, and still just take care of ourselves. And that's what Agents of Change has done for me. Mia is one of the few Black women I know who have a male son, and my son is 26 and Malcolm is some age. He's a young Black male. And so I know that I can turn to her and say, I lose sleep at night worrying about my son. And she's someone as well that I can lean on, as well as Craig, as well as Jennifer, as well as Devlin, as well as James, as well as Cher, and just all of us. It's just been a wonderful experience, and I can't wait to see what grows from where we are right now. These are just the roots, what Craig has explained. So I can't wait to see us grow. I feel empowered. I feel like we're unstoppable.
Very good, very good. Dr. Butler, your word and a little introduction about yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm James Butler, Associate Professor, Department of Behavioral and Community Health. One word. I have to tell you, Dr. Thomas and everyone, I vacillate between two. One is anger, and the other one is tired. And as the late Fannie Lou Hamer said a number of years ago, when she attended, I believe, the 1968 Democratic Convention, she said, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And so the Agents of Change has given me a platform where I can share those feelings without fear of reprisal, fear of being rejected, and just share my truth. And so I was reflecting on what the Agents of Change means to me, and I want to share two stories very briefly with everyone. The first one happened in 2018, and it was my turn at bat to tell the rest of the group about my progress with some papers that I was writing, grants that I was writing, and I was working with a colleague at another institution, and the actual relationship became toxic. And I don't recall exactly how it happened, but I felt free enough to share my feelings about working with this person. And I remember Craig walked by me. We were sitting in the conference room that he has mentioned earlier. And he said, I think you're gonna have to cut that one loose. I think you're gonna have to let that one go. And the rest of the group, you know, talked to me. And I mean, I won't give you all the gory details, but it was such a toxic relationship until I was driving out of town and I had to pull my car over. I was getting so angry and annoyed and frustrated with this process of just trying to not only work with somebody, but the process of getting a grant written and to get NIH funding and to get that next paper out and the next class you have to teach and on and on. And I don't say any of that to be negative. It's the reality that I've lived as a Black academic. So that's the first one. They helped me through that. They supported me. I did cut ties with this person. And thanks to the AOC, they gave me that platform to stand on to say, even though I'm cutting ties with this person from another institution, I have my family, they have my back. And trust me, they had my back at that time. The second one just happened. There's a gentleman in the area who spearheads a prayer group locally and nationally that convenes on the 19th of every month. It just started in April, hence COVID-19. So these gentlemen from around the country gather virtually via Zoom and they pray for 19 minutes. And so they're men from all over, that's some pastors and teachers and preachers and what have you, that come on and they actually pray. Well, this gentleman, I shared with him our op-ed. And he read it and he said, I need you to join us on June the 19th. He said, I read the op-ed. We're praying about COVID-19. I said, yeah, there's something else that we need to be praying about too. And that is the actual murder of these Black men and women, and nobody seemingly is doing anything about it and how it's related to structural racism. And we've just had this great conversation. He said, I want you to read it out loud on the 19th of June to the men that will be gathered on this meeting to pray about COVID-19, but we've got to look at something else, such as you're absolutely right. There's this duality of an issue that's going on. COVID-19 is doing what it's doing, but also we've got to address the plight of the Black person who is being murdered at the hands of racist police people and also racist individuals who don't look like me. And so I read it. And as I was reading it, I felt the power of the agents of change, even though they were not with me, but I felt their power, their support as I was reading this actual document. And I wanted to do my colleagues justice by putting the emphasis where it needed to be, as I was actually the orator for the group that particular day. And so thank you, Agents of Change, for your generosity of being a family and checking me when I need to be checked and encouraging me when I need to be encouraged. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Butler. And Dr. Butler also, as a tenured member of the faculty, very, very important. Dr. Roberts.
Hello, everyone. I love looking at this screen and seeing everyone in all of the Brady Bunch. Actually, no, it's not Brady Bunch, it's too much color. But in any case, I'm happy that we're able to have this together. And to answer your question, well, actually, I'm Jennifer Roberts. I'm assistant professor in the Department of Kinesiology. I've been here 5 years. And in many ways, I almost felt like I was going through like a pre-agent of change orientation during my interview, because I was asked who I wanted to meet with during my interview for the position, and one of the people I suggested was Dr. Fryer. And in all, disclosure, I was looking at faces that looked like mine, and so I said Dr. Fryer, and I think he was a little confused because he was like, I don't know who this woman is. But in any case, it was a really, really nice meeting. I felt like at home. I walked in his office, he had smooth jazz playing. It just was so nice. And immediately I was like, this could be a really nice environment in terms of people who I'd be working around. So needless to say, I did, accept the position, been here 5 years. How do I feel now? With all of the two public health crises that are happening concurrently, in many ways, I feel like I've been ice numb, because I've tried to protect myself in terms of feeling too many emotions. And I like how I can actually, talk with my fellow agent of changers and actually just start to kind of fall out. I mean, and I always will say sometimes, like, Dr. Fryer, I'm gonna have to start cussing because I'm just so upset. And we can just have this kind of like moment where we're able to just like let it all out, and it's a very protected environment. And so I appreciate that. I don't think this type of family can ever be replicated in any other way and any other situation. I mean, it's just completely unique, and I'm really thankful for everyone who was part of it. I feel so supported. I mean, particularly as I'm starting to put my materials together for my tenure packet, and it's just been really supportive. I mean, everyone's been looking at my materials and just saying, you can do this, you got this. And I just think this is something that, I don't take for granted at all, because I've never had this type of supportive situation that is beyond coworkers, it's family, like Dr. Fryer said.
So can I follow up on what you were sharing a bit about that? Because we have a question that came in from Gloria Aparicio Blackwell about how this program can be expanded to the rest of the campus. And I know you're saying you don't feel like this is very unique for you all, and you've developed and built relationships, but clearly this is a support system in many ways. You talked about, Dr. Fryer talked about emotionally, also talked about intellectually, and your professional development, both in grants and writing, et cetera. And so she's curious, how could you see this being expanded to other either chapters or across campus or even other institutions?
I wanted to weigh in on that, because I've, with the, all due respect to Dr. Thomas, I think before the other members of AOC were joined the faculty. Like he and I were the only tenured Black faculty in the school. And so one of the things that I've thought a lot about is how unique this is. And I think there's sort of three ingredients that have really helped. So everybody in academia is smart. So that's not the secret sauce. What I think is our secret sauce is that everyone is smart and really excellent and brilliant at their work. Like I learn from them every day when I hear about the things that they're doing, but they're also very down to earth people and real, authentic. So we share our struggles. We have similar sense of humor. And so there's like a chemistry that I do think would be hard to be duplicated. But I think people who are willing to leave their academic egos at the door and bring that respect into the space so that you build that trust, because as Craig mentioned, it kind of evolved over time. And it was about, I don't know, 2 or 3 years in when I looked back and I said, oh my God, like this is, I never thought anything like this could happen in an academic space. And so I think what ends up happening for us is that it's a retention tool that even for people who are not members, that it's a core group of Black faculty in the school. And then the third element is that we're all under the same roof. So I'm the only Black professor in my department. And that's the case for some of us, but we see each other as we move through the day. When there's a faculty staff assembly in the fall and the spring, we see them there. And I look up at the mezzanine and I see them walking and I'm able to wave or do a fist bump in the hallway. Like to be able to have those cultural touch points as a Black professor, and our other colleagues, they just are kind of used to it, you know? And so that to me is the secret sauce. So I think in terms of people who are going to bring a collaborative and trusting spirit to the space, keep our confidences, I think those are the things. And then not being threatened by the brilliance of your fellow colleagues, but just being like, man, I get to be in the presence of such really smart people, and I'm just going to claim that. We just claim the success in those meetings, and it's so affirming to have that given back to you when you need it.
So Mia, stay on the mic just for a little bit, because I wanted you to say a little bit more about yourself, like we did the other agents. I got 2 more agents, and we just completely open these things up. You want to say a little bit more? So,
well, I will. I came to Maryland in the January of 2010. I'm a clinical psychologist by training, and I do research on Black families and what people call in the media the talk, which is this conversation about how do you deal with the police, how do you deal with racism, discrimination, so how do parents help their kids manage that? And so, oh, and then the other thing, because I came from a traditional psych department, I've now, as a member of the School of Public Health, I've become this public health researcher and learned to speak the language of my colleagues. And so I'm truly interdisciplinary in the ways that I think about this. So does that kind of get it, Dr. Thomas?
Yeah, you're good. We're going to open up again, but I wanted you to say that. Cher, come on, young lady. You've just been promoted and tenured too. How's it feel?
Well, it feels pretty good. And I also have to thank everyone, including Dr. Thomas as a mentor, and then AOC. So I'm an associate professor in epidemiology, and I always tell AOC this, I'm just gonna say it one more time, that I always feel honored to be included in this group, because I mean, like Mia said, everyone is smart, but it's not so, it kind of goes even beyond that. I mean, I've learned a lot as a health disparities scholar. I've learned a lot on a scientific level. Some of my AOC peers, I've shown them some of my materials, and you know, you get honesty, right? Like there's no lack of honesty. And so but that's important, not only for myself as a emerging health disparities scholar, but also as a person, to be open and ready and to be able to learn and understand different perspectives. And so I generally feel honored to be part of AOC and thankful for the support that I have been given over the past few years. So
I love the organic nature of how you formed and what it means for the next generation. So we have young scholars coming along, and it's Dr. Devlin Jackson as a young scholar coming along. What's it like? Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then what was it like to be incorporated into a support network like this?
So I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Behavioral and Community Health. And thank you, Dr. Thomas, for setting it up in that way, because what I've gathered from this being the most juniored individual on this group, and when I say juniored, meaning that I just recently, as of last summer, had the opportunity to become a faculty member as an assistant research professor, non-tenure track in the Department of Behavioral and Community Health. And a lot of, in addition to many other individuals in the School of Public Health that supported me in getting there, a huge part of that support came also from my agents of change, brothers and sisters. And when I tell you they are truly a family, they really are a family. And it's just been phenomenal being in their presence and being able to get their mentorship, their support, their advice on all of the experiences that they have collectively gained over many, many years, being in not only academia in the University of Maryland, but in other institutions. And so it's so critical as a junior faculty member to have this type of support, in addition to their support that they receive from their other administrators and other faculty outside. I always tell other friends of mine who are in academia and they in other spaces outside of UMD, and when I tell them about this group, they are envious. They wish they had a group like this in their spaces. They're always like, wow, you are so lucky. And I think about even recently how one of the reasons why I didn't have the opportunity to be on that op-ed was because of this family space that they allowed for me. Unfortunately, a little over a month ago, I unexpectedly lost my father around the time that they were writing. And as a family, they invited me into the space, but they did two things. It was one side, you know, let's lift up our sister, let's honor. I mean, they've still been comforting me in a way that I just can't even imagine that there's some junior faculty of color who, if they had experienced that in that time, I don't know if they would have made it in everything that's going on right now, and still the responsibilities and pressures of not only being a faculty member, but a person of color. And so they gave me that space, they supported me emotionally and tangibly, but then you also had, at a certain point, they were calling and they were texting and they were saying, okay, sis, so remember the responsibility that you also have as a person of color in academia. So what are you gonna do in honoring not only your father, but your ancestors and all of the other individuals in the community who are counting on you because they know that you are a small representation. So yes, you need this time to heal, you need this time to grieve and continue through that process, but also think about ways that eventually you can still work through this grieving process and honor your father, honor your community, and honor those that are coming behind you in this space, and honor those that are expecting you to speak on their behalf when they can. And so that is something that's so important. And so honestly, it made a huge difference in me recently being able to get R21 proposals submitted. It was a huge difference in now, you know, getting back on track and getting some work done. So I thank my AOC family members, because if I did not have them in this space, I don't know how I would be able to move forward, especially in this political climate, and especially as a woman of color junior, when we already have a lot of the things that we have to endure personally and professionally, as Dr. Fryer stated in the presentation. So thank you to my family members, and thank you to UMD, School of Public Health.
So, you know, I'm old enough to remember being the only one, and I know that Mia Smith-Bynum knows what that's like. But the young scholars you've just heard, they don't want to be the only one. Even the white scholars don't want to be in an institution that's not diverse. So to answer Gloria's question, I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that the structures that currently exist in the name of trying to do these things, like advance, are actually more diverse and more intentional in addressing issues of race, that advancing faculty diversity, which many of these young people here have been part of, lives and is supported, funded appropriately. We should not take these things for granted. And we're going to need agents of change to use your agency to demand. Just because we have a Black president doesn't mean we get complacent. And so let's open this floor up. I think people around the country would welcome to see what it looks like to have a critical mass of faculty. Maybe one other institution in the country, University of Michigan, begins to have this kind of critical mass. And so it's very important, especially in our new School of Public Health, relatively young School of Public Health, and to see you also getting through the promotion and tenure process. That's a long-term commitment, and it gives hope to all those coming behind you that indeed, yes, Dr. Roberts, it can happen. It will happen. You're in the right place. Floor is open for questions.
Dr. Thomas, if I may, because you mentioned the question from Gloria Aparicio Blackwell. Mia touched on this, and I think this is really important. So we are not the only writing group on UMD's campus. There are other departments. Sociology has a writing group that they include students as well. One of the questions is, could it also be opened up to staff? I think that it could. So can you have, I want to think about this and I want to break this down. Could you have, if you will, extensions of AOC or chapters of AOC where they are writing groups around this identity as a underrepresented minority in academia or an ally, non-URM ally? Yes, you could do that, right? Does it necessarily mean that it's going to form the way AOC has, right? I'm talking about its culture. That may not necessarily happen, but the writing group in and of itself has a function that can be quite productive and effective as it relates to individuals doing what they need to do as it relates to promotion and tenure. However, the aspect of who each individual is and what they bring to the table, you know, humbling themselves, not bringing their egos. One of the things that was very clear from the group at the beginning is that we are not each other's enemy, right? I'm not in contests with the members of AOC, right? I'm vested in their success. So their win is my win, as far as I'm concerned. Their win is our win, right? Those who are promoted, we all win. Those, when they get a grant, when they get a paper, when they get, right? Everybody in academia doesn't feel that way, but that was very clear from the outset, that is the way. And so we promote and push each other to graciously self-promote, right? You know, that thing that you need, right? When you get something and you want to hide away, you need somebody to push you out front and say, no, 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 you need to open up your mouth, right? This is the time to do that. Or at the same time, you could be saying too much. And we will graciously as a group say, hey, 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 right? Maybe you need to pull back. You want to think about the, right? Because we are in it for, our premise is that we're in it for the long haul. We are working, right? We are trying to, Dr. Thomas used to say this to me and I despised it. And I used to say to him, I hate when you say that, but now I know what he meant, right? I don't like the term play the game because this isn't a game, right? So that's what I used to always say to him. This ain't a game. I didn't come in academia to be playing no games, but we understand what is necessary for you to be deemed worthy in the eyes of the institution to be promoted, right? And you know, you start with publish or perish. That's where you start. And so we understand that, but how do we do that in a way that also still speaks to who we are in our pure, authentic selves of why we came into academia, right? So I'll give you a different example. I find it disturbing that in spring 2020, I have students, Black, Latino, or white, who say to me, you are the first Black professor I've ever had in higher ed. Spring 2020, just ended in May. That is unconscionable to me. We should not be having students at that level say that the first time that they've had a Black faculty member stand in front of them was in my case, they're sophomores or juniors, right? So, you know, you and I debate the first all the time. Dr. Thomas is real big on, you the first. And I said, yeah, but that's a shame that we're the first, right? The premise is not that we're ready to step in that role because somebody got to be the first, but that can't be the end to the story. So to Gloria's comment, which is a fantastic question, this can be done along the lines of students, it can be done along the lines of staff, it can be done along the lines of faculty, across race, across ethnicity. But what makes it work and run are the people themselves. So you can set up the structure, but the only reason, I want you to think about this, what is the hardest day of the week to get faculty to come on campus? Friday. And you're gonna come every Friday for the whole, we require the whole day. And we take attendance. And we let people know, we ain't sick, where you been, right? We don't have people who say, I ain't got to tell you where I've been, I'm an adult, I'm a da-da-da-da. People buy in, right? Because this is what we say. Your attendance is required because as much as you say you get from the group, you have to get, you got to feed the group. And that is the secret sauce that Mia was talking about. So if you can get individuals to do that, you can expand this to a whole host of ways. And we have thought about this critically as it relates to the group, because the downside of where we have evolved is that you don't want to mess it up. Right? We got something that's going well and we don't want to mess it up. And so how do we continue to do that? We are very, very, very serious about not only what we do, but how do we remain, this started as being as inclusive as possible. We've invited other folks, right? And you have to realize that for certain folks, this is not what is best for them, which is also absolutely fine, right? Because what we are more interested in is what works for those individuals so that they can also be successful. So if group writing sessions are that, so my colleague, Rashawn Ray, has a writing group in sociology. They include students. Just to give you an idea, AOC, we have thought about how do we open it up for graduate students or undergraduate students who are interested in health disparities or health equity work. And one of the things that we shopped around is that we would take a particular half day of our Friday once a month to allow students to present their work to the group and get feedback from the full group, right? We have thought about a whole host of ways that we serve at all levels, right? As we think about the work that we have to do. But we take it seriously because we can't just, our lunch hour is so precious because that's when we get to vent and talk and do all the things that we want to do, laugh and how, but we're also there to write. We got to be productive. And so we push each other in that way. One of the things you have to do when you first walk in is you have to say what you want to get done for that day, right? And then people say, have you got, hey, what was your goal today? Did you get that done? And so I think that this can happen. And then the other question is coming from Edith Perry, which I think is really important. Aaron.
Also Maxine.
And Maxine. And I think,
yes.
Yeah, and I think so Edith Perry, I appreciate, she has a question from Delegate Payton about Delegate Payton Melnick and supporting the NIH grants. And I think maybe perhaps that's something that we can, with Agents of Change, discuss outside of this space and then get back to your office about that, because I feel like that's going to be, we're getting close, we're about a minute left, and I recognize we're going to try to stay true as possible to time.
So Aaron, yes, we would love to take these are heavy hitter questions, but we would love to take them and have the opportunity to respond. But very quickly, what delegate—
Let's go to Maxine's too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what delegate Payton Melnick can do right away is that we have to keep the pressure on NIH to figure out the implicit bias and the structural racism within their system. They have openly and honestly done this on their own, this investigation, and have highlighted where they now think those issues are. We just need to keep the pressure on them to fix it, right? And so, yes, we would love to address these questions. And the other thing is, how do we, yes, this is from Ms. Maxine as it relates to her question, but how do we make it that these groups are unnecessary in the future? And that is the $1 million question. And that's why Agents of Change are here, right? So this transition, this formation of us into Black scholars is, we want to get to the point, this is our point about why first should not always be so heralded, right? First are important, but it should not be the end game. We want to work to the point where we're not needed. So that means we have to create institutional change. So that means we're looking at Dean Lushniak, we're looking at the provost, we're looking at the president. I'm looking at leaders of every center in the School of Public Health. As far as I'm concerned, the School of Public Health should be the school at the university level that represents what this change could really be. And now you have we have synergized around this op-ed and opened up our voices and realized that people want to hear what we got to say. You may have created a monster, because we are now a monster that's going to work with you. We are now going to keep this pressure on, because we cannot, I was talking to Mia yesterday, these are her words, we ain't going back. We won't be where we are now this time next year.
So I want you to keep that in mind, Dr. Fry, and all the agents of change as the university works out the future of advance, the future of advancing faculty diversity. These are structures that the culture of accountability you've described as a thread throughout all of your talks picks up on, with a sufficient institutional support. And the other thing, since you meet just outside my office in the conference room, every now and then I stick my head in, and it feels like a study hall. And then I hear the laughter and I hear the conversation. I stick my head in and it feels like church. So there is something special there. You don't want to break it, but there are common threads and themes that need to be part of the culture of the university. And with that, boy, what a lightning speed this has happened. I want to say thank you to all the speakers and to the folks behind the scenes making this possible. And to let you know that the next session of our community dialogues will be on July 16th at 4 o'clock. And the focus will be on COVID-19 and the implications for moving towards reopening our university. I think there are going to be huge struggles and challenges as we attempt to reopen. And these issues of race and the trigger, I say trigger because we're all in the anxiety of the moment, that agents of change will be necessary to help facilitate a true and honest conversation about race as we move forward in our School of Public Health. And so with that, I'm going to have Aaron just describe anything that people need to know about how to find this recording a little bit later. And Aaron, take us out.
Sure. Thank you so much, Dr. Thomas. So we are recording this session and we will post this to our website. We have a page on our website that is direct from the homepage that moves our viewers directly to our work and resources around racism and diversity and inclusion and equity, excuse me, diversity, equity, and inclusion. But very specifically, I will name to you all, and I think this is what Agents of Change is saying as well, that we are actively engaging in anti-racist work. We are actively engaging in anti-racist work. We are naming that in our school. We are collaboratively working with folks across campus and doing it. And you will see that in the work that's reflected that Agents of Change is doing and has been doing. So we will post that there. I think we'll probably also post this, speaking ahead of myself because I haven't talked with comms, but to our web social media as well, so that we can have a wide range of reaching our partners, our students, et cetera. So thank you all for participating. We really appreciate this. Again, this is the first opening up of our Community Advisory Council and our Dean's Council. We will continue to invite you to these every 2 weeks is our intention of having these. And Agents of Change, you know, we invite you to join us again as well. So thank you all. We appreciate your time. We value your time, and we value your future interactions with us and suggestions of how we expand what we're doing.
I don't want it to be lost, Aaron. You said we are actively engaging anti-racism. You need to know.
Absolutely.
3 weeks ago, a month ago, that would not have been the conversation. That is our next step for our university and for our country. So again, thank you all very much. Look forward to see you in the next event. Bye-bye.